Hi, and welcome to the Bourbon Friday Show. My name is Eric Lutzenegger, and I'm from Tenacity. And each week we like to get together here, have a sip of bourbon, and have a nice conversation with people and meet people from the local startup community. Bear with me, this is like my first time doing this. I'm pleased to be joined by Satya Mishra, who is an entrepreneur, engineer, improvisationalist, podcaster, new U.S. citizen, and new father.
Yes, all of those are true.
So I guess today we're going to flip it up a little bit, and I'm going to start out talking about the bourbon first. The bourbon I brought today is a new bourbon from Wild Turkey. It's called Longbranch. And the reason I brought it in today is that Longbranch is actually a collaboration with Wild Turkey and the actor Matthew McConaughey. And when we think about people and what they do, they often will do things that you don't expect. And Satya, you are somebody that does a lot of things that I never expect you to do as somebody that works on chips and engineering. So thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So tell us what it is you do.
Okay. So my background is electrical engineering. I went to college in India and got a degree in electrical engineering. And after that, I started working in chip design. Excuse me. And my first job was out in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I really learned how to design chips. And we do this branch of chip design called analog circuit design. And in chip design, there's basically two different domains. There's analog and digital. Digital is what you typically think about when you're thinking about chips. It's processors, it's Wi-Fi chips have a lot of digital, or your cell phone has a lot of digital. And digital is programmable. Mm-hmm. So that's a big advantage of it. But digital doesn't interact with the real world.
Okay.
If you want to interact with the real world, which has light and sound and pressure and temperature and all these things, you need to do something called analog. Mm-hmm. Because the digital world is binary, 0 and 1, but analog is continuous. So that's the branch of electrical engineering I'm in, or chip design, analog circuit design. And so my current work is, for example, in image sensors, where the image sensor takes a light as input, converts it into electrical signal, which is a continuous signal, and it's still an analog domain. We treat that signal very, very carefully because we want to make sure that our image that we're getting is the best possible, lowest noise, brightest. And to do that, you need to be treating it very, very carefully so you're not adding extra noise from all the processing you're doing. And as soon as you get your signal, you amplify it up, you do some more conditioning on it, and convert it into digital. And then you can do your programming, your image algorithms, your enhancements, everything in digital domain.
Okay. And what are you using these chips for?
So these chips, image sensors, you'll find them in your cell phones, in the camera, in automotives. So cars have all kinds of cameras now, so they can check which lane they're in, and if there's a car in front of them, if there's a car behind them. There's a lot of cameras in security cameras. So every building has a bunch of cameras keeping eyes on people coming in and going out. Okay. Each of those cameras have slightly different requirements. As for security, you want something that can see in very low light, but you don't really care about resolution that much. If you're talking about a camera on a cell phone, you want very high resolution, so you get a very nice picture, but maybe not as good low light, and you also want it very small, so it'll fit in your pocket instead of being a humongous thing. Sure. So each of those requirements end up being different cameras or different sensors.
So you're talking about security. Would that be any internet-connected devices or anything like that?
Yeah, the internet connection would come in afterwards. So the sensor typically does not have internet connection by itself.
Right.
All it is doing is capturing the light and converting it to digital signals so you can send it off to the next step, which is usually a processing chip that will enhance it, and then connect it to the internet and send it wherever you need it to.
Okay. And so you're in electrical engineering. What got you really interested in the chip manufacturing or design rather?
Yeah. So it's basically when I was in college, it was one of the more interesting subjects, and I ended up working at the newly created VLSI laboratory at my college, where I was like in the first year that it was set up, and we worked on a chip. We defined what it needed to do and made the chip and sent it for fabrication, and it came back, and it was fantastic experience, and it's this is a good thing to do.
Okay.
So I stuck with that.
And that was still in India while you
That was still in India.
Okay.
So this was back in 2001, and India didn't have a lot of electrical engineering. There was some in present day Bengaluru, or it was called Bangalore back then, but there was like 2 companies that were doing analog circuit design of any note. So there was an effort on part of my college and some people at National Semiconductor to develop the talent in India too. And they funded a lab with support from Sun Microsystems and Cadence, which was another company that helped, and National Semiconductor. So there a bunch of companies from the U.S. and combined to help start that lab.
And then you chose to come to the U.S. for school or for?
No, I ended up getting a job back in 2001 in Fort Collins. And this was a bit of an interesting thing. So 2001, if you remember, it was a dot-com bust. I got hired before the bust set in. But by the time I actually came and joined the company, there was a total restructuring because the market had crashed, and the market that I was going to be initially in had completely evaporated. So I ended up doing something completely different compared to what I was thinking I was going to do.
So I think something that I know very little about is sort of the immigration process. So you had to go through all the visa process and citizenship process.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah, that's something that is, a lot of people don't know much about H-1 immigration. So that's the immigration process I came through. So H-1B was created, I think, back in the 60s in the Johnson administration to bring in skilled immigration from outside to enhance the U.S. workforce. And what happened was in late 90s, they figured out there was this Y2K bug that was going to destroy the planet. And there were not enough engineers in the U.S. to save the computer industry, to fix all the bugs everywhere. So what Congress did was they expanded the H-1B program to temporarily to 180,000 a year. And that brought in a lot of skilled people from India. So India had just liberalized back in 91, and there were a lot of engineers all of a sudden. So that helped bring in a lot of people from India to help this Y2K problem. And that was really the beginning of the H-1B becoming a bigger part of U.S. immigration.
Are you saying you solved the Y2K problem for us?
I did not.
Okay.
But I was a beneficiary of that 180,000 extra. I think I was like the last year that the 180,000 number was there. Or maybe it was the year before. After, as I said, it was a temporary increase. It went back down to 60,000 a year, which is currently the number. And then there's 20,000 extra for people who have graduated from U.S. universities. That's 20,000 out of probably a few 100,000 that students we are getting in the U.S. universities. So not everybody gets to stay.
Sure.
Only a small fraction do.
Yeah, and I to me, and we were talking about a little bit earlier, that that's something that's always very much confused me with the U.S. immigration policies. We bring in the best and brightest from all around the world.
Yeah.
We give them scholarships. We bring them in, and then we say, all right, see you later.
Yeah, then we put them in a lottery and say, 20,000 of you get to stay and everybody else needs to go.
Yeah. So yeah, it honestly it makes no sense to me at all. So you went from having your visa, and then did you go to the green card, and then all
Yes.
of that?
So now getting into the green card for an Indian born person is extremely difficult. Because the way green card system worked, I forget when this was set up, but I think this was set up in the late 30s when there was not a lot of goodwill for people from non-white races. So they set up the system so that irrespective of the size of the country that you're immigrating from, there's 7,000 visas or 7,000 green card numbers for every country in the world. Now, if you think about India and China, who have 1 billion people each, there's a lot more immigrants from India and China than anywhere else.
Sure.
So if you're from India and China, you get to there's a few 100,000 people before you in the line for that 7,000 annual visa numbers or green card numbers. Occasionally, what they'll do is if there's leftovers, then they'll also allocate those numbers. So roughly about I forget what the exact number is, but somewhere around 500,000 is the maximum number of skilled immigrants we can get in a year.
Yeah.
In green card. So I had to wait, about 10 years after my first application to get my, or I should take that back, about 8 years.
Okay.
I applied in 2005. I finally got it in 2012.
Yeah. And then, very recently, in fact, you became a U.S. citizen.
Yes. I became a citizen last year, and that was a fantastic experience. We had a ceremony at the SLU Stadium with dignitaries, and I forget who was there. There was a magistrate, I think, or a judge from the U.S. Federal District Court here. It was a fantastic experience. There were 900 other people who got citizenship with me, people from all over the world. It was an incredible experience.
I'll bet. Yeah. I'm always like, whenever I talk to you, and we'll be talking about American politics, I'm like, wow, you know way more about this than basically every U.S. citizen around.
I mean, I had been in the U.S. for, this was 2017. So I had been in the U.S. 16 years. And this was already my adopted country. It's just that the immigration process had become such a cumbersome process for me that it was not official that I was a citizen, but in my mind, I was already a citizen.
Oh, right. Yeah, so I guess let's move to something that I didn't know you did for the longest time, but then now you sort of graduated in these improv classes. So why did you start doing that? Because that feels like that would terrify me.
Okay, this is interesting actually. So in 2015, there was this the startup weekend, which was an entrepreneurship workshop kind of thing where you get 36 hours to launch a company. I participated in that in a team, and that team won.
Okay.
So we continued that process for about a year afterwards. But during that year, it became apparent to me that I am very much an engineer, and I struggle when I'm talking to other people in expressing myself or understanding what they're trying to say. So one of the things I wanted to do was get better at talking to people and being on my feet, or thinking on my feet, some kind of thing. And one way I thought was to do that was to do improv. Improv, you're basically forced to think on your feet and do things right away. And I signed up for a class. I started at level 0, which is like, if you have stage fright, you do level 0. I did level 0. And it was a fantastic experience. I made a lot of friends. I had a lot of fun. And I don't know if I've improved in my communication with other people. But improv was so much fun. It was such a learning experience. It allowed me to explore better what I think, and also allowed me to experience other people's thoughts just by trying to act there, trying to be them in an improv scene.
Okay.
So it has helped me tremendously, I think.
Yeah.
And and it's also a lot of fun, so I keep doing it.
Great. Yeah. So that leads me into like the next question is the next thing. You're now a podcaster.
Yes. So the podcasting idea was I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I rarely hear voices of scientists and engineers.
Okay.
But I think scientists and engineers have a lot of good stories to tell. They put in a lot of effort into what they do. So that was one of the things that I wanted to do, and say, all right, since nobody else is doing it, I went ahead and started a podcast where I interview people in chip design.
Okay.
And there are people that have done incredible things. They had their own struggles. They had their own achievements, and those things and they have fantastic stories to tell. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm doing a podcast. And that podcast is on iTunes now. There's one episode online.
Okay.
It's called SSCS Chip Chat.
Okay.
So if you want to listen to engineer stories, go check it out.
Great. I definitely will. You'll get at least one more download out of the show. So let's see what else. So we're also here, and we're both members of T-Rex, and I really love this place, and I don't know, how do you think T-Rex has helped you?
Oh, T-Rex is just the community is so fantastic. Everybody is so supportive of every new idea that you come up with. You can bounce it off with other people. Fantastic suggestions and everything that you need to get done, and just being friends. We hang out. We have bourbon. We have beer.
We do. I think I may have introduced you to bourbon. Maybe I don't know.
I think that is right. I think you're right. I had Scotch before, but
Sure.
I don't think I had ever had bourbon before he started it. I think it was early last year.
Yeah, I'm sure it was early last year. Yeah, and that's one of the things, and definitely we've become friends for over the last few years, and I really appreciate that. So let's see. So I don't know. How, I guess you just became a new father.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine as an entrepreneur having time, and I already lose enough sleep over that. How do you deal with that kind of situation and all of that? Of course, I'm sure you're a wonderful wife in that.
Yeah, she does. She kind of did the major part of the job. I can't take much credit, but I should say that no, it's definitely not easy. I've had very little sleep in the last. It's getting better now, but the first 4 months were rough. You had to wake up so often to feed the baby. There's always something happening. I'd love to say that everything I can take care of, having a family and doing work and everything. It's not true. Something has to give. The family always takes precedence. So I think for the past few months, work has suffered a bit, but hopefully we'll pick up soon.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. She is so much fun.
Yeah.
So,
what's your daughter's name?
daughter's name is Tara. She is now 6 months old. She was. We had her at Mercy Hospital here. They were a good hospital.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay. So, let's see. So, I guess. So, I don't know that we actually covered this before, but So you got brought here for a job?
Yes. Yeah.
And then,
That is a bit unusual because it's hard to find a job at, a couple continents away. Fortunately, because as I was saying, National Semiconductor was one of the companies that was sponsoring the VLSI lab at my college. I had some connections in National. I talked to my mentor over there saying, I want a job. He said, well, you can go to Netherlands, where National had a design center, or you can go to Fort Collins. So I don't know anything about Netherlands. Dutch people, I don't know anything about them. I'll go to Fort Collins. I ended up in Fort Collins, and fortunately, the people there were fantastic. And
yeah, I love Fort Collins.
my manager taught me everything that was to be taught about living in the U.S. How to do groceries, how to buy shirts, how to run the dishwasher, how to make coffee.
Okay then.
Yeah,
So,
I showed up with a few $100s in my pocket and nothing else.
yeah.
And fortunately, they had a corporate apartment that I could live in. Somebody lent me a bike so I could get to work. Eventually learned to drive and bought a car of my own. But definitely got wonderful support from everybody there in the first few months. And I'm still friends with them, even after I've left Fort Collins for 8-9 years now.
Okay. So what brought you to St. Louis?
So after Fort Collins, I lived in Irvine, where I worked for this image sensor company. And my wife graduated in the meantime from her PhD. And she graduated at the bottom of the recession so she can find a job for a while. Finally, she found a job but it was in St. Louis.
Okay.
So he said, at that point we had said, we'll go wherever in the country that you can find a job. So since we got that, we moved here. And initially my plan was, I'll work from home for a few years and then we'll probably move back. But we have grown to like St. Louis. She is doing well at her job, and
Yeah.
I've taken an entrepreneurial bent, and the support system in St. Louis is fantastic. All the people in T-Rex are so helpful. There's I-10 has been helpful. GVMS has been helpful in our previous entrepreneurial ventures. So St. Louis is a good place to do a startup.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've been here for about 20 years and worked my way up, and then started my own company 3 years ago, and here we are. So I agree. Like, this community is amazing, and especially at T-Rex. So I guess we are having weird issues at the bar over here. So. So, I wonder, so you've been here, you live out in St. Charles.
Yeah.
I'm struggling right now, and that's okay, because you have to do things that you're afraid of, right? Yeah. So that's kind of...
Couldn't say enough of that. So speaking of doing things I'm afraid of, I also did Toastmasters for a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Toastmasters is another one of those things that I think everybody should do. It's an incredible organization. It's so welcoming of anybody with, as long as you're going to apply yourself, they'll welcome you and help you grow.
Yeah.
I don't know too many organizations that do that.
And Toastmasters is public speaking.
Public speaking and leadership.
Okay.
So I was quite involved in Irvine, but I haven't found a club that fits into my schedule in St. Louis, but I hope to find one day. So Toastmasters has 2 tracks. There's a leadership and a public speaking.
Okay.
So public speaking, they walk you through different levels. So you start at level 0, I guess. That's called competent communicator. So they have 10 steps in the competent communicator, where the speeches become progressively more complicated, or you're putting in more details into them. They start off with just talk about yourself. Then you add, watch out for how you are saying it, what you are saying, how you're delivering it. So that's a 10 step for competent communicator. Then they add more variety as you progress. So after competent communicator, there's I forget, competent speaker. It's been a while. I forget now. There's silver, bronze, and bronze, silver, and gold in communication series, and then there's a leadership series. So there's what they figured out. There's an organization, and every organization needs leaders. And Toastmasters builds those leaders. So everybody rotates between the different leadership positions. There's president, there's vice president of education, who's making sure that everybody is on track for their educational goals. There's vice president of communication, who is talking to outside groups about Toastmasters. There's somebody who's making sure there's members coming into to the club, because there's always attrition. People move out, something happens. You need to keep a good quorum of people so it's effective. So it takes a lot of effort to just recruit people into the club to keep it active. And all those things that you can take and then apply to your job situation. Mm-hmm. And this is a low stakes situation. You're not losing millions of dollars or getting fired if you do a job wrong. You can fail and you can improve.
Right.
Yeah. And I learned so much from that experience about what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to lead an organization where everybody is depending on you to make sure that things work. So I think that's a fantastic organization that
it sounds amazing. And I know they used to do some kind of events here at T-Rex with the Toastmasters, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I think they tried to, there was some effort to start a club here.
Okay.
But as I said, you need a certain quorum of people to get it going. And it's not obvious to people that when I resisted going to Toastmaster for a year and a half. Okay. My wife already was a member. So I said, this is a fantastic organization, you should go. Like, organization for it's probably another waste of time.
Yeah.
But once I joined, it was like, oh, wow, this is really helpful, and this is really fantastic. But it takes a certain amount of going to the club to realize that, okay, this is actually helpful. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just takes a while to get a club established.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anytime sometimes it really takes a long time to even figure out whether or not something is for you or is truly helpful to you.
Yeah.
And then you don't even necessarily realize when it starts to help you.
Yeah. And people say that public speaking is their tier number one. Toastmaster is a good way to get over it.
So I don't know how much longer we're going since our producer isn't sitting over there, but yeah. So I think I don't know. I mean I learned so much from everybody that's here, and that's kind of why I started Bourbon Friday entirely. And I think it keeps going and keeps growing. And I want to see that happen, and you definitely have been part of that. So I do appreciate you being here.
Perhaps this is a good time to talk about the history of Bourbon Friday.
Okay. So sure, you can ask me questions now. So yeah, I mean, I kind of it actually started out more as a spontaneous event, and with a couple different people.
Yeah.
And we went, and somebody happened to have a bottle of bourbon in their office, and we sort of procured it and started hanging out here. And that was like the pre-Bourbon Friday days. And then that we kept saying, oh, we should do this. We should keep this going. And it just never happened. And then finally I was like, well, let's just make it happen. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to keep this going. So then I started to bring in drinks, and or started bringing whiskey on a regular basis, and then we sort of started, like everybody started to bring in their own bottles and sharing not just the whiskey but their story. And I think that when you start doing that, that's like the most powerful thing that I think you can do, is when you really get to know somebody. Yeah, so.
We're having fun with our producer.
All right, so I mean,
It's going viral.
like it's probably going viral because it's this is the worst episode of the Bourbon Friday Show ever. These people are complete amateurs, and that is totally fine with me. And
I'm having fun.
that's good. Our producers are having fun. Satya and I are having fun.
We're having fun. I finished one glass of water.
Should we do
A pan around. I don't know. I think we've been going for over 20 minutes now for sure. I don't know.
5:30 already?
All right. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap it up. We kind of went off the rails today, but that's totally fine.
And sorry about the delay in starting this because of technical issues.
We're all good. And I think I just want to thank everybody who actually tuned in and watched to this point. And you know, if you want to come out to Bourbon Friday, you can reach it out to us at facebook.com/EQSTL, or you can reach out to me. I'm at Eric at tenacity.io, and we can get you on the list. Right now, it's a private event. But we definitely want to like introduce more people to it and introduce people to this community, which has been so powerful in our lives. So I just want to, again, thank everybody. Thanks, Satya. What's the podcast again?
SSCS Chip Chat.
Okay. So thank you all. Thank you, Nick, Vanessa from Tech Marketing to save us. Thanks, Jason from EQ for producing. And everybody, hope you have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.